Let's be honest here for just a second. The most recent ban list was really underwhelming, with only one card getting banned, 2 cards getting limited, and 2 cards getting unlimited. Most people were really unsatisfied with the ban list because we all felt like way more could have happened, and we also suspect that very little will change. And you know, the last format was so boring and so stale that we all wanted kind of like a soft reset where every deck dies so that other decks can take their place. Hell, towards the end of the format, everybody was selling their Kashtira deck to buy the Unchained deck instead. And Unchained is dirt cheap, and it's also refreshing to play because it's kind of new, unlike Kashtira, which has been around for almost a year. But then again, things turn out to be quite different from what we initially envisioned. So the Kashtira deck did die because of the ban of a Rizard, but for the most part, the engine is still playable. We were all expecting Fenrir to go to 1 or even banned, and for some reason, it miraculously dodged the list and it is still 3 now. And because of that, the card actually went up in value. So now, even though we can confidently say that we no longer have to worry about Kashtira Rizard, it doesn't mean that we're done seeing Kashtira cards. Like I said, you could still play a Kashtira engine in your deck or just splash in 3 Fenrir, whatever you want. I mean, a lot of decks were already playing 3 Fenrir in their decks, so that's a good thing for them. With that said, the ban of a Rizard is infinitely more impactful than you really think it is. Because that doesn't just mean that Kashtira is banned and everything else is the same. Without a walking Macrocosmos-esque monster running around, it also means that a lot of graveyard-based strategies are now back to being really good. The Tearlaments deck went from being checked and not really good to being extremely good for a wide variety of reasons. So first of all, without Kashtira, there's also, no Arizart and less Shifter. That means that you will be interacting with your graveyard more often, which is always a good thing for Tearlaments. And second, Tearlaments has an extremely good Unchained matchup because most of their interruptions don't really line up too well against your Tearlaments combo. Their Unchained Soul of Rage can get negated by your Lulu Karos, and then their Caesar doesn't always do something because you can also chain block your graveyard effects to fuse, and their trap card only has like a few cards that can really hurt you, like the field spell, but apart from that, not the best. To make matters worse, if Tearlaments goes first, they can go into Abyss Dweller and just shut down Unchained on the spot. Whereas when Unchained goes first, it's not really like they can do anything to make sure that Tearlaments cannot play. So in other words, Tearlaments has a checkmate win condition against Unchained, whereas Unchained doesn't really have a checkmate win condition against Tearlaments. So in other words, Tearlaments kinda has like a 90+% win rate against Unchained when they go first, but the same cannot be said for Unchained. And Tearlaments is just one of several examples of decks that really rejoice over the fact that they can finally start using their graveyard again. The Danger Dark World deck kinda went from being a troll deck to being actually terrifying. Because this deck only really gets annihilated by 2 things, that's it, that's all. Getting denied graveyard access, such as, Shifter, Abyss Dweller, etc., and also Droll and Logbird. The good news is, Droll is not seeing a lot of play in the main deck right now because it is garbage against Unchained. This means that because of the fact that a card is not really good against Unchained, that Danger Dark World can capitalize off of that and become infinitely better. Now, on the flip side, Unchained does nothing against Flunderies. And because of that, I can suspect that deck to start seeing a little more play. Because, with the death of Kashtira, Flunderies is now officially and sadly the best Shifter deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. I hate that deck. From the bottom of my heart. But yeah, that as the Unchained board does nothing against Flunderies, and I'm not making this up. Like, Caesar doesn't negate anything, the Unchained Soul of Rage can't link off with anything. That's a nice deck you got there, Jeffrey. But yeah, that's another story for another day. I will make a full video just on that matchup later on. But again, it's really funny to say that the death of Kashtira and the rise of Unchained kinda just changed everything in Yu-Gi-Oh! And this is the beauty about this game, sometimes very little can happen in a ban list and a lot can still change. This can be explained by the fact that Kashtira Rizard was just that much of an oppressive card, and without it running around, you can expect a lot of older decks to become really good again. Oh, and that also means that you're no longer forced to play, undesirable board breakers such as Kaiju, Book of Moon, Book of Eclipse, etc. Because you see, sometimes these cards are good against some other matchups, like Purely, for example, but sometimes they do nothing. And Unchained rejoiced over the fact that people had to play the books for the Kashtira matchup because the books were really bad against Unchained. Since you have to fill in your deck with less garbage board breakers, you can make your deck more consistent by actually adding more gas. This also helps older and a little less consistent decks to keep up with the metagame right now. Now, even though I've mostly talked about Kashtira and its implications thus far, there are still some other noteworthy things about this ban list. The fact that only Magnamut and Chaos Space got limited was really good news for Dragonlink because that is one of the most lenient hits I could have imagined for the deck. Like, imagine if Hieratic Seal got banned instead. Dragonlink almost improved with this ban list because even though it got a little bit of a nerf, its main enemy is now out of the picture. And it has an extremely favorable tier elements matchup, which is really good for Dragon Link because, the bestial monsters are just extremely good against tier elements. The bad news is the purely matchup as well as the Unchained matchup are both really bad. Now, I can already imagine you guys in the comment section below. But Yak Sign Juice Worm is really good against Unchained. Let me correct you real quick. Juice Worm is good against bad Unchained players, not against Unchained in general. If your opponent knows how to turbo out a Caesar before getting a light or dark in the deck, which is by the way a 2-card combo, really simple, then your Juice Worm will never hit the field and you'll never be able to break that board. I still believe that Dragon Link is an extremely good deck and has a lot of potential, but probably not worth playing at the moment. It's more of a meta call that you should keep your eye out on and, consider in the future whenever it becomes good again. When the field will especially be dominated by tier elements instead of Unchained, then you should be playing Dragon Link. Anyways, the other things that this ban list gave us were more copies of Herald of Orange Light and Salamangreat Gazelle. Nobody cares. Like, the only interesting thing about these cards is that I guess if Ava comes back, Herald of Orange Light is better, and if the Shizu monsters come back, the card is also better. And Gazelle only really helps Salamangreat, which is fine. I mean, they can have all the power in the world, it doesn't really change anything because it loses to one Nibiru. Deadass though, the only thing that truly, seriously matters about this ban list is the ban of Kashtira Rysart. This ban single-handedly justifies the existence of this whole ban list, honestly, and nothing else could have happened, and it would still be, at least to a certain extent, a decent ban list. Personally, I would have been extremely mad if a lot of other cards would have gotten a hit, but not a Rysart. So at least we can thank Konami and be grateful for the fact that the main problem is now out of the game. But yeah, again, without a Rysart, not only are some older decks good again, but also some older cards. For example, you can play Effect Veiler and not really have to care too much because you're going to be seeing less Shifter except against Flunderies. Call by the Grave will be able to resolve more often because at least cards will be going to the graveyard instead of the banished. Shuttle Fusion can finally start breaking boards again, going second. The Super Heavy Samurai Engine will now be infinitely more explosive because, at least your cards are not getting banished. And as I have said before, if your deck can take care of a big kitty, at least you don't really have to drown it with a lot of, bad board breakers. And this doesn't look like the kind of format where you really need hand traps to thrive, so actually I would recommend staying away from them. Especially in a format where a lot of players are playing triple tactic talents and thrust. I mean, the Unchained deck is actually known to play 3 thrust and 1 talent. So it's literally better to not play hand traps at this point. Now again, personally, even though I am not a big fan of this ban list because I think a lot of cool things could have happened, I will at least, take what we have at the moment. By the way, tomorrow I will try to cover what should have happened on the ban list and, what would have been the perfect ban list that we could have gotten for September and October. Anyways, that's all I had for this video, so guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts about this ban list in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.